It's been 25 years since the end of apartheid. There's no doubt your country has come a long way in that time. But at the same time, the sad reality, many would say, is that the past decade of ANC rule has been a lost and wasted decade, hasn't it?
No. Because for me, even every difficulty, every mistake, every failure is a lesson, and therefore it's an opportunity to do better.
So it hasn't been a lost decade in
No.
your view? Because that's the view of Cyril Ramaphosa, the current ANC president of South Africa. He called it a lost and wasted decade.
I don't agree.
But it isn't just the president who said that. Others have gone much further than him. The Nelson Mandela Foundation has talked about the systematic looting that has taken place in South Africa. Archbishop Desmond Tutu said as far back as 2011 that the ANC was, quote, worse than the apartheid government because he said, at least you were expecting it with the apartheid government. It's pretty damning.
It is. And I remember that moment when the bishop said that. And when we meet him, he doesn't really sound like that. I'm saying, Mehdi, wrong things have happened.
Yes.
People have done wrong things. But that doesn't mean it's all lost. It's all gloom.
The ANC will be remembered for fighting for racial equality.
Sure.
But in economic terms, when we talk about inequality, the World Bank says that South Africa today is the most unequal nation on earth. That's a pretty embarrassing title for your country to hold, isn't it?
I must say it is very harsh. But I wonder whether it's not an exaggeration. I really think that we must see both good and bad. It can be said by the World Bank is not God. And therefore, just because they've said it...
I mean, to be fair, it's not between God and the World Bank. It's like,
no, sure.
I mean, those are extremes. They are an institution that studies this stuff.
Sure.
I'm not sure they have some anti-South Africa agenda.
But
they
are
brought
human
the numbers,
beings.
And your country came bottom.
They are human beings. I don't
So you don't accept their verdict, is what
I
you're
don't
saying?
believe so. And we must keep improving on what we discover is a weakness that we have.
And is corruption one of those big weaknesses you have?
Corruption is one of the reasons why we have the commission that is going on, where we are saying, let it all come out. Because we need to know what is wrong, how wrong it is, who did what.
You're acting like you were a passerby or an observer. You were in the thick of all of this.
No.
In the ANC, you were the chair, you were the Speaker in Parliament, you were the Deputy President. This happened on your watch, hence these questions. So, for example, back in 2017, your ANC colleague Praveen Gordhan was sacked as finance minister by then-President Jacob Zuma. He said at the time 150 to 250 billion rand, or 11 to 15 billion US dollars, had been looted from the state. Why didn't you speak out at the time and join with him to call out that looting?
I was right there, Mehdi, and we were discussing these issues every day at that time. We were seized with them. That is why we decided we need for these things to be investigated, and we need for it to happen publicly, in the open, so that we get to know what exactly is the problem.
But you're implying that no one knew anything, that we're just discovering this now. The state capture, what's called state capture in South Africa, this idea that associates of the president and other powerful people took over utility companies, energy companies, state institutions, that happened in full view of everyone's eyes.
Actually not. Things were not happening in full view of everybody.
The finance minister disagreed with you.
There are many issues I'm learning for the first time in the past few months.
In terms of corruption?
In terms of how bad things were.
Okay. Something that happened that we don't need an investigation because there have been lots of investigations was the scandal involving then-President Zuma's own estate, the Nkandla homestead, where nearly 23 million US dollars, or 246 million rand of taxpayers' money, was spent on what President Zuma described as security upgrades, which included a swimming pool and an amphitheater. I'm curious, what kind of security was the swimming pool providing the then president of South Africa?
Well, a minister was in charge of that investigation, and in his view, that was not a swimming pool.
This was the police minister, the president's handpicked police minister. He put out a video to classical music in which he described the swimming pool as a fire prevention measure.
Yes, he did. That's the report we got.
And you accepted that? Seriously?
It's not up to me, Mehdi. It's not up to me.
I didn't say it was up to you. I said, did you agree with that assessment of... I mean, this is serious stuff. We can laugh, but $23 million on pools and amphitheaters in a country where half the population lives on less than $5 a day. You accept that kind of excuse?
No, it's not a question of accepting or not accepting. Part of the challenge that we have is that part of that is actually government property, which was actually for purposes of ensuring that there are health facilities nearby for the president to be able to be looked after, or any of the staff.
In 2016, there was a landmark constitutional court ruling that said Jacob Zuma should pay some money back. It also ruled against the National Assembly that you were Speaker of, saying you would, quote, fail to fulfill its constitutional obligations to hold the president accountable. That's an indictment of you.
Yes.
You're the Speaker of Parliament.
It's not an indictment of an individual, because the individual actually does not determine the position that Parliament or the National Assembly does actually end up taking.
So case finally, was called Democratic Alliance versus Speaker of the National Assembly. Sure, that's you.
Because I am the leader, and therefore, on behalf of the institution, I become the person who is quoted.
Do you believe you were a neutral, impartial speaker?
I was.
Then why is it that you, as a neutral, impartial speaker, you had to apologize for calling an opposition leader, Julius Malema, a cockroach at an ANC rally? Is that a neutral, impartial term?
I used that term not in Parliament, so let's not...
Oh, so you were only neutral in Parliament. Once you stepped outside of Parliament...
I said that in a political context. I was in the Northwest...
So why did you apologize? You don't sound very apologetic today.
Because it was not correct for me to call... another person a cockroach, whether they were...
I'm glad we can agree on that. Just looking forward, South Africa has a new president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who claims to be determined to stamp out corruption, even though he himself has been accused of misleading Parliament over a campaign donation. And even though out of 21 corruption scandals during the ANC's 25 years in office, just one senior party figure has been brought to account in terms of going to jail. How can anyone have confidence in the current ANC government to clean things up when only one person went to prison?
I think you have seen the actions of the president, how he has dealt with the issues of strengthening the institutions of governance, strengthening in particular the justice system, bringing in people who are going to act differently, people who are going to have the courage and to do things focused on correcting what has been wrong in the system.
Just on that one person who was sent to prison, this was the ANC's former chief whip, Tony Yengeni, who was sent to jail for fraud. I believe you accompanied him to the prison gates. How is that not putting your party and your alliances above the interests of Parliament and the country?
I accompanied Comrade Tony because I did not believe in what he was being said to have done. And I accompanied him as a comrade.
So you don't accept the court's verdict in a democratic South Africa?
I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you that I accompanied my comrade, and I don't feel guilty for that.
You don't? Can you tell our viewers what position Tony Yengeni, this ex-convict, was appointed to by the ANC last year?
Position?
Yeah, he was appointed to chair of the Working Group on Corruption. Does that make sense?
One thing
to have a person who went to prison running your working group
wrong
on corruption?
In the ANC political life, we look at things sometimes not exactly the way other people see them.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go to our panel who are waiting to come in. I'm joined by Makosi Kosa, a former ANC MP who resigned from the party in 2017 after calling for President Zuma to step down following corruption allegations. In your view, Makosi, and you were there for a lot of this period, did the ANC fail to hold President Zuma to account? Did the Speaker fail to hold the then President to account, in your view?
Of course, yes. I think they did fail to hold him to account. And in fact, some of us that were speaking out against what we saw as an attack on the Constitution and on the social contract were persecuted. And especially Mambaleka is somebody that I held in high esteem as somebody who molded me as a young person and as a feminist, I expected that I ought to have received some kind of support from her. So from that point of view, I honestly do think that in terms of injudiciousness, leadership injudiciousness, I think they have to prove themselves if they are to be believed.
Did you fail to give Makosi Kosa the support she needed? Did you let her down?
I didn't let her down. She and I had a quick exchange outside just to agree that we have stuff to catch up on. And we will do that.
Okay. I mean, I'm all for you catching up. But just for the purposes of the people watching around the world and in this room, do you want to deal with the point she made, that you let her down as a feminist, as an MP trying to hold the president accountable? You weren't there to back her up.
I was there to back her up when she needed security. I made sure that we should look into the issues of what kind of support Parliament had to ensure she had. And we dealt with that very fairly, very focusedly.
Okay. Xolani Kala is the executive chairman of South African Business Abroad, a member of the ANC. Do you think people have faith in the ANC to deal with this corruption issue that's been festering on their watch, especially given the current president has his own campaign donation issues going on?
Well, look, South Africans have a huge faith in the African National Congress. You must remember that we inherited a situation where we have an infrastructure that was not capable to assist our people. Hospitals were only designed for the privileged. The majority of black people were unable to attend hospital. If you are going to universities, they were not there catering for black people. So with all that, the government of the ANC have done so much for the South African people. It is for that reason alone that they keep voting for them.
Yes.
But I must add something else here. The fact that I'm having this privilege to have this dialogue, discussion with you in United Kingdom, it is also that the government of the ANC, we were not allowed as black people to be able to sit here and talk freely. Yeah. It was a criminal offense for me to be here.